Come get some.
Evil Dead Rise. Google says it's supposed to be a sequel to the OGs, like the 5th movie in the timeline. Bruce Campbell says it's meant to be a reboot, I think. Hollywood says it's a spin-off. The movie itself could be taken either or. It's relatively disconnected. If you've seen literally nothing Evil Dead related, you'll like it anyways, because it's not like super lore based or anything. It's not like it's good. It's good. If you're a fan of the OG, the references are there. Like the book is there. The book gets read. They say the words. For me, the resurgence of horror movies started with Scott Derrickson's The Black Phone. It's a really good movie. It's nice and tightly written, tightly directed. It's pretty good. So check that out if you have the chance. But yeah, so this is pretty good. It's very violent. If you're not a fan of gross body damage, I definitely don't recommend it then. Like, I get that, like, horror might be your cup of tea, but there are just some people who are like, I saw that finger twist, I don't like it. There's, like, a drop of Eldritch in it. Like, you feel that because the book of the dead, so to speak, the Necronomicon, as it were, is supposed to be there. It's weird, because there's so much... I have mixed emotions with it, because I like so much that it does, but at the same time, the first, 5 to 10 minutes of the movie have the worst dialogue humanly possible. There's, this group of, teenage frat kids, and they talk like an old man thinks kids that age talk. That cringe, weird, old man writing dialogue for a teenager. I give it props for restraint with how they wrote it, because there's a character who is transgender, and it doesn't come up once. The character just exists and lives. Yeah, props to them for writing a character first and never once bringing identity into it. There's some immersion breaking, like some of the joke placement is a bit awkward, and there's some scenes where you're like, was that meant to be funny, or am I meant to still feel tense? Like, there's a scene where a monster is behind one of the characters and they spin around and stab them. Doesn't do anything, obviously, so the monster's just like... And then it just slam cuts to the woman getting yeeted through a door. So I'm like, I laughed really hard because it was really funny cutting. And my brother was like, dude, why are you laughing? There was so much gore just now. Everyone thinks you're a psycho now. And I'm like, I don't care. That was so funny. There's a lot of atmospheric horror. Like, so often people expect jump scare, jump scare, jump scare, jump scare. There's a lot of atmospheric horror that sort of like... It's not like catching you off guard, but you're like freaking out before it's time to freak out, you know? I feel like they need to be a little more clear where it sits as far as the franchise goes. Like, is it a reboot? Is it a spin-off? Is it a sequel? I don't know. I ain't got no clue. All I know for a fact is, it's pretty trippy. There's a lot of, body horror in it. I guess I'd have a couple criticisms. My couple criticisms for the movie as of right now is, I'm sure the more I think about it, the more I'll, come up with stuff, but I have a couple criticisms right now. One, it suffers from my least favorite horror movie trope, which is little kids are present, helps bring tension, right? Because you don't want the little kid to get hurt. Okay, cool. They then write the little kids to be the most retarded, brainless, boneheaded waste of oxygen on planet Earth. This little girl sees her mom murder people. This little girl sees her mom hurt herself and their family. This little girl sees her mom with yellow eyes, an inhumanly wide smile, and blood everywhere, and at least 2 broken limbs. And when they get lucky enough to get the mom locked out of the house, what does she do? The little girl lets the mom talk her into unlocking the door so she can reach in and grab her. It's just meant to be like a scary scene. Nothing super bad happens from it. But oh my god, it's really stupid. I want to give it points for taking risks in the sense that it kills off like 80% of the cast. Even the ones that are like barely set up and barely developed. Like, you get introduced to a lot of the family's neighbors. Like, in the trailer, you don't see them at all. In the trailers, you only see the family and the drama between them and their possessed family members. But there's neighbor characters, and they get enough character where you're like, yeah, these are people. These are neighbors, it's believable. But then they get murked pretty early on in the chaos, and it's pretty sad. But it makes sense, and it's a bummer, and you're like, yeesh. There's no Ash Williams cameo. I didn't base my grade off whether there was or wasn't, but there's no Ash Williams cameo, and you know what? It doesn't matter to me. Like, cause I'm a fan of Bruce Campbell, but I don't need him in all my movies. Like, he's an older guy. He's taking it slower. He's not gonna be in everything. It would have been cool. Yeah, it would have been cool. He's taking it slower. He doesn't want to be in everything. He's turned down a couple Evil Dead projects because he's just like, he doesn't have like the physique or the stamina to play Ash Williams anymore. The middle sibling is like this disrespectful protest libtard kid, and it's weird because the older, the trans brother, the mom, the aunt, and the youngest, they all have stuff to endear them to, but the middle daughter is very like whiny and like not like assertive, but like the negative version of assertive. Like, she's just yapping a lot, and it's really like she doesn't like contribute much. All she does eventually is get possessed. Main character is resourceful. The main character is smart, but the tension only really comes because she's working with a retard in her young niece who is really stupid. But other than that, it's not even for the entire movie. It's just in key moments where the plot needs it. And I really don't like that trope. I really, really, really don't like it. No matter how young you are, you have a self-preservation instinct. And this kid randomly throughout the plot selectively just sort of like shuts that off. And I'm just like, oh, okay. So in this abandoned bank vault under their building, they find the book and the vinyls. Because what happens is they're in LA, so there's earthquakes. One night during a storm, it's kind of like the perfect storm of events. Storm knocks out the power and the cell phones. Okay. Earthquake happens. It's not clear if the Evil Dead characters are the ones who trigger the earthquake and the humans get led to it. I feel like the book triggers the earthquake, so that way it can open the hole in the ground that leads to the vault. It felt like it needs to be made a bit more obvious, because it sort of comes across as contrived. Like, you mean to tell me on the same night that a big storm happens, the cell phones go down, and an earthquake, and the demons? If it's LA, it's natural. I know, it's not the fact that, like, it's not the fact that I'm questioning, like, oh, can earthquakes happen there? No, it's not that, it's the timing. Because the cell phones go down, a storm knocks out the power, and the earthquake happens. So I'm curious, because especially the San Andreas fault line, yeah, you're right, but it's a matter of timing, like stacking all three. Like, it's the equivalent, because I live in Tennessee, it's the equivalent of my house getting torn up by a tornado, and then I get struck by lightning 5 seconds later. The mom gets got. It's really brutal. Oh, she does become a dead space beast. She does become what I said before makes it sound like the mom becomes a dead space beast. She is. There's even a scene where the character with the shotgun shoots off 2 of her limbs and she doesn't stop. Another trope I hate is when a character is possessed, but like the human being inside can fight. Because A, I'm a Christian, which means I don't think that's feasible. That's not something that can actually happen. And B, it's also dumb because it's like a deus ex machina that saves the plot. Oh, I'm a demon and I'm about to rip your throat out. Oh, look, one of my eyes turned normal again and it's squinting and gritting and half my mouth is gritting its teeth and I'm like pulling back just enough so you can get away. You can't time it right. You can't predict when it's going to happen. They just sort of throw it in there to throw a wrench in the plan of the movie. So what I like about the Evil Dead monsters is they don't possess you, they possess your corpse. So they get you killed first, and then they possess the body. I want to give it a high score, because it is a good movie. The acting is competent. There's a lot of setup and payoff that hits really hard. There's not too much wrong with it, although I praised, like for example, I praised the trans character for being more than just a trans character, you know? I praised them for that, but at the same time, they're not much of a character. They like rock music because they have a buzz cut and earrings. And that's about it. The character work was very weak. Other than the mom, the aunt, and the youngest daughter. The character work for any other character is pretty much dead on arrival. The little kid, they try to make her, like, adorable and stuff, but she is, like... It's weird, because they make her weirdly witty with dialogue. Like, when the aunt is like, I'm getting us out of here. The youngest daughter goes, You'd be a good mom, Bevy. Auntie Bev. And she'd be like, oh, really? Why do you say that? And she's like, because you know how to lie to kids. And I'm like... The movie's an hour and a half long, which is a mercy. I am sick of every single movie that comes out being like 2 hours, 45 minutes or some crap like that. I hate it. I hate it. Like, chill, Marvel. Not everyone wants to sit in the theater for that long. But, the movie's only an hour and a half long, which is a blessing in and of itself. I thought when you watch the trailers, if you go back and watch my coverage of the trailers, I thought that the scene with the teenagers at the lake was gonna be like the beginning, the cold open, and then the blonde in the family, the older child, was going to find the book and bring it back to the high-rise, and chaos would ensue. That's not what happens at all. Turns out the less interesting scene, the more conventional horror movie scene, is meant to be an en medias res, and the entire plot of the movie is meant to be like a flashback. Everything with the family is meant to be a flashback, because what happens at the very end of the movie, once all the carnage is done, it shows a couple floors down. One of the characters from the beginning scene of the movie gets out of their apartment, locks their door behind them, is carrying all their luggage and stuff as they're going to the lake to go chill with their homies. And I'm like, yeah, okay. Okay. Like, I just feel like I'm not a fan of en medias res in horror because it spoils a lot and it sort of like tells you how it's gonna go. So it's essentially a Catcher in the Rye type deal, kind of. That's a good comparison. I do like it. It's good. I like it, but it could have been better. Characters could have been better written. The in medias res bit could get thrown out completely. Yeah, and when you do that, you could make room for the kids to be fleshed out more as characters. You could make room for more people than the mom and aunt to get fleshed out as characters. I don't like the horror movie trope where you have, like, a basic... It's in games, too. I hate it when this happens in games, too. Resident Evil is really guilty of this. Y'all will recognize this immediately when I start to describe it. You have, like, a humanoid villain who's, like, either composed or, like, lethal or, like, creepy or freaky. And then the movie or game goes, okay, final boss time. And the person, like, jacks themselves up on a germ or, like... In this movie's case, the demon in question, it's only one demon, and it can control multiple bodies at a time. And that freaked me out because all the neighbors get killed, all the kids except one get killed, and the mom gets killed, which means it has... It has 7 bodies. 7 bodies it can use. It is literally the 6 paths of pain and Nagato of demons. As they're headed for the final battle of the movie goes, oh, time for a boss fight. And as the little girl and the aunt are riding the elevator down, the demons start, like, laughing and cackling and, like, ripping the mom apart and, like, grafting themselves together so they're like a giant ball of arms, heads, and abdomen. And I'm just like, immediately after it starts, like, it starts being counterproductive to the monster's agenda because it corners them in the elevator, but because it made itself into a giant orgy ball of corpse parts, it can't reach them because it can't get into the elevator. And I'm like, why'd you do that, bro? Had you not done that, you could have gotten them. For me, my go-to comparison is Resident Evil 5. Because you have Albert Wesker being the, like, badass villain boss the entire game until the very end where he's like, Ouroboros! Oh! And then he, like, hulks out, and he's, like, immediately less threatening. And I'm just like, that's... So yeah, the monster RE5s itself by the end, and I'm just like, oh. All that to say, I still really enjoyed it, and I'm definitely gonna watch it again. So, I'm giving this a 7 out of 10. It's closer to an 8 than to a 6. It's what you expect from Evil Dead, just... much, much, much scarier. So, yeah, 7.8 out of 10. Still a good movie. Still a good movie. But it could have been... It's one of those movies where you're like, this is great, but it could have been perfect if you just tweaked these elements, you know? 7.8 out of 10. It's okay. It's okay. Check it out. Check it out. Mommy's with the maggots now.